Beautiful people, what's up, man? Welcome to Smith the Speaker, my YouTube channel. I know I threw you for a loop because usually I go on Sundays at 9 a.m. But today, is a special day, and I just want to make sure that I'm doing my due diligence and being accountable and responsible for, the things that I say, the image that I want to create, the society I would like to see that I envision in my mind. And it's easy to talk. I say a lot, like a lot of people just check boxes to check boxes. I want to do more than that. I want to make sure that, I'm actually doing the work, and not just saying. So with all of that, thank you for showing up, checking out today's Smith the Speaker show. Like I said, usually I go Sundays, but today I want to be mindful and review and discuss the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, I know today, January 1st, a lot of people celebrate the beginning of a new year, possibly make some resolutions, try to do things different. And the hypocrisy of the stolen land that we occupy and some of the legal documents that are attached to create such land always makes me laugh, makes me wonder. But then it just leads to a lot of many of the societal challenges that we face today. So thank you. I don't want to keep you long. It's probably going to take a minute. There's not going to be a lot of pictures because I don't really believe in like pictures. I need you to hear the words. So this is probably be a good episode to get a workout going. You know what I'm saying? Get on the treadmill, get on the Stairmaster, do some sit-ups or something, put your earphones on and just listen, because that's what this is going to be about. So please allow me maybe 30 minutes or so. So the Emancipation Proclamation signed January 1, 1863 by then President Abraham Lincoln, who was a Republican. So many things about the Emancipation Proclamation. A lot of Black folks don't even know it exists. That's a whole different thing. But you know, once the proclamation was announced, shortly thereafter, maybe for a dozen or so decades following it, on this day, lots of Black people and abolitionists, folks with empathy and who are apathetic to the horrific lifestyle plagued, not even plagued, bestowed upon Black folks, would salute January 1st with a reading of the Emancipation Proclamation. And then, it slowly fizzled out. What's crazy is, some of the documentations that we should be focused on, we are not. Again, that's a whole different story. Let me not get off track. So, Emancipation Proclamation. So, what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to honor my ancestors who who envision a time when something such as the Emancipation Proclamation would turn their existence around, because they had no other choice, really. So, this is the transcript of the proclamation, January 1st, 1863, by the President of the United States of America, and I quote, "A proclamation. Whereas on the 22nd day of September in the year of our Lord 1862, a proclamation was issued by the President of the United States containing, among other things, the following, to wit, that on the first day of January in the year of our Lord 1863, all persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state, the people whereof shall then be in rebellion against the United States, shall be then, thenceforward, and forever free. And the executive government of the United States, including the military and naval authority thereof, will recognize and maintain the freedom of such persons and will do not, and will do no act or acts to repress such persons or any of them in any efforts they may make for their actual freedom. That the executive will, on the first day of January aforesaid by proclamation, designate the state and part of the states, if any, in which the people thereof, respectively, shall then be in rebellion against the United States. And the fact that any state or the people thereof shall on that day be in good faith represented in the Congress of the United States by members chosen thereto at elections wherein a majority of the qualified voters of such state shall have participated, shall in the absence of strong countervailing testimony be deemed conclusive evidence that such state and the people thereof are not then in rebellion against the United States. Now, therefore, I, Abraham Lincoln, President of the United States, by virtue of the power in me vested as Commander in Chief of the Army and Navy of the United States in time of actual armed rebellion against the authority and government of the United States, and as a fit and necessary war measure for suppressing said rebellion, do on this first day of January in the year of our Lord, 1863, and in accordance with my purpose, so to do publicly proclaim for the full period of 100 days from the day first above mentioned, in order and designate as the states and parts of the states wherein the people thereof respectively are this day in the rebellion against the United States, the following, to wit: Arkansas, Texas, Louisiana. There's some exceptions, and I'm not going to go into all of those, pardon me, about Louisiana. Mississippi, and I'm back quoting: Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia, except counties designated as West Virginia, and also the counties of Berkeley, Accomack, Northampton, Elizabeth City, York, Princess, and in Norfolk, including the cities of Norfolk and Portsmouth, in which accepted parts are for the present left precisely as it's proclaimed were not issued. And by virtue of the power and for the purpose aforesaid, I do order and declare that all persons held as slaves within said designated states and parts of states are and henceforward shall be free, and that the executive government of the United States, including the military and naval authorities thereof, will recognize and maintain freedom of said persons. And I hereby enjoin upon the people so declared to be free to abstain from violence unless in necessary self-defense. And I recommend to them that in all cases, when allowed, they labor faithfully for reasonable wages. And I further declare and make known that such persons of suitable condition will be received into the armed services of the United States to garrison forts, positions, stations, and other places, and to man vessels of all sorts in said service. And upon this act, sincerely believed to be an act of justice, warranted by the Constitution, upon military necessity, I invoke the considerate judgment of mankind and the gracious favor of Almighty God. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the United States to be affixed. Done at the city of Washington, this first day of January, in the year of our Lord, 1863, and of the independence of the United States of America, the 87th, by the President Abraham Lincoln, William H. Seward, Secretary of State. Unquote. I end the reading of the Emancipation Proclamation. There you go. Now, I know to a lot of you, that's a lot of word mumbo jumbo, a very healthy word salad, if you will. A lot of where tos, unto fors, here I said, and there I goes, and all of that. A lot of legalese, if you will, understanding that a lot of the writers, authors, if you will, of early documents were either lawyers or some kind of higher educated personnel, people who spoke in a broken Queen's English, if you will. So a lot of that, again, like I said, it's a lot of mumbo jumbo, a lot of ambiguity in there. And so, like I said in my post, I want to review it. I want to read it, and then just have a quick discussion, or share my opinions, because I don't know if it's a discussion if there's nobody else on here to talk or provide feedback or to debate me, or challenge me where they might see a need fit. So after you heard that, I know a lot of you again are just like, man, what are you talking about? Like, what is it? So understand this: the Emancipation Proclamation did not in its entirety set slaves free. It did not end slavery. It was maybe a catapult, if you will, a launching pad, a springboard to get the energy moving. But as powerful as it is at face value, it really isn't so powerful in the grand scheme of things, because there's so many things that after I read it. Now, I want to say this: I keep a copy of the Emancipation Proclamation in my truck because of what I'm about to discuss. Share. So let's just really quick. The proclamation. Let me say this: white Americans don't have a proclamation to announce their freedom. Take that what you want. A proclamation, by definition, is an announcement. That's what it is. It's an announcement. It's not a law. It's really not even a document. This one just happens to be in the form of a document. A proclamation is an announcement publicly. And that's what Lincoln was doing. I'm publicly announcing the emancipation of slaves. So take that. I want you to, some of these highlights, I just want you to take. They're open. I would challenge you to entertain some of these highlight bulleted ideas that I pulled out, that I extrapolated from the Emancipation. So one of the first things that when I'm reading, I see again the hypocrisy of the Constitution of this United States, of this stolen land. Mind you, the Constitution was written during slavery, but in that Constitution, they were begging for independence from the oppression of the crown. So in here, in the Emancipation, in the opening, it's the year of our Lord. The hypocrisy is that is total opposition to, well, actually, it's a violation, if you will, of the First Amendment of the Constitution, because it clearly there's the exclusion clause that prohibits any association or acknowledgement of any religion. So we have an announcement that entangles a construct that is forbidden in the Constitution, in a legal Constitution, which then goes on again in the face of, I don't want to say authentic the Emancipation Proclamation is very authentic, but I'm just saying like some of the things are glaring um hypocritical points, if you will. You know, he says in Emancipation, Lincoln does, it's an act of justice. So great, it's an act of justice. So if it was an act of justice, wouldn't this then be a law and not a proclamation or announcement? And if it was an act of justice, why did justice take so long? Because in the Constitution, you have the right to due process, which we'll talk about later, but you have the right to a speedy trial. Now, again, slaves weren't on trial. They were enslaved. They were in prison. They were held against their will. So if we're talking about justice, why did justice take so long? Centuries. Hypocrisy. Again, in there, it goes on to speak about qualified voters. And says, so understanding the precipice, if you will, of the Emancipation Proclamation, we're talking 1863. There was a prelim that Lincoln wrote for the Emancipation Proclamation in September of 1862. Understand, there's a civil war brewing, maybe even taking place in front of us or in front of them. And the civil wars. Now, I'm not a scholar in history, so I'm sure there's some scholars who would argue that the Civil War was not solely based on slavery. They'll make some other points like economics, right, or representation, which it all was. But the underlying fact is that for me, in my humble opinion, the Civil War was specifically about slavery, because slavery was capitalism, which was the economic engine that built, that continued to fortify and supply the Union, the entire Union, not just the Confederate, the Southern, but the entire Union of their financial freedom or windfall of cash, if you will. So understand that there has been things leading up to this. You know, we can talk about the Missouri Compromise. We could talk about 3/5 Compromise. Again, the 3/5 Compromise was part and parcel to the Emancipation Proclamation, to the Civil War. When we talk about the power of money and capitalism, understand, and I go back to what I said earlier, why did, if it was an act of justice, why did it take so long? Because to me, the emancipation in its birth wasn't out of the necessity from moral convictions to allow Black folks freedom, but I think they knew as a whole, not just Lincoln. Lincoln wasn't the mastermind, sole mastermind, but I think and because we're going to get into some more things, but the entirety was that, listen, this cash cow that we have is on the brink of bankruptcy if we don't do something about slaves, whether good or bad, whether the entire country, the Union as a whole, North and South, becomes slave land, or we don't. But we have to do something. Otherwise, this United States that we built, that we have a constitution for, is soon going to crumble, and then we'll be back as whites under the oppression of the crown. Because you got to think, you know, Britain over there said, like, go ahead, yeah, y'all keep the Civil War going and, you know, kill each other so we can get where we was. You know what I'm saying? So understand all of that hypocrisy when we start talking about the purpose of the Emancipation Proclamation. Moving on, I know I'm long-winded here, but it's a lot for me to discuss. You know, one, he goes on to say, refrain. He's talking about the slaves, like refrain from violence unless in self-defense. We are still doing that. We are still told to refrain from violence in the face of violence. I mean, you see it play over and over again. You've seen it with the civil rights movement. We see it today uh, with Black Lives Matter. We are constantly told to refrain from violence when violence is in our face. I wonder why that was there. Talked about reasonable wages. Here again, I ask again some of the I challenge folks to question why the Emancipation Proclamation was created and announced. Um, Again, if it was an act of justice and they, white Americans, did it out of a moral standpoint, then when he says to go seek reasonable wages, how do you know what a reasonable wage is? It was illegal for slaves to be educated. You don't have nowhere to go. You don't have any means of finances, whether that's assets, whether that's liquid, whether that's hard. You don't have anything. You don't have a skill per se. You so when we talk about reasonable wages that Lincoln wrote, then you can immediately, if you do some history, you can immediately see the boom of sharecropping. Now you get into sharecropping, and again, you know how to toil land, maybe sow some stuff, maybe let me say, because I'm belittling and I'm minimizing the intelligence of Black humans. Let me not say that, because that's on its full premise totally inaccurate. We were highly skilled, and understand we were skilled long before slavery began in the 1800s or 1600s here in the stolen land of America. Highly skilled. I think what I wanted to say and what I should have said is that based on the color of our skin, skill didn't matter. Skill didn't matter. There are many stories where you can learn from history that, even current day, contemporary, that a Black skinned human being will be overlooked or totally neglected just because of the Blackness of their skin. So reasonable wages always strikes me as peculiar. And that's like kicking your 6-year-old out the house. Go find some reasonable wages. What are reasonable wages? Where do I get those from? Make it make sense, right? The military part is again alarming, because at that particular time the Confiscation Act was still confiscation was grabbing slaves basically and putting them into the service in very mundane and humiliating positions like cleaning the toilets and stuff like that. So that's another part, the military part, because again, there's many stories, including my father, who told me about his time in the Army. Yeah, just because you was in the Army or the service or whatever, it didn't mean nothing. You were still Black. You still was over there with them. You know what I'm saying? I know in the warmth of other suns, in the novel, they talked to a gentleman who got into, I think he was a doctor overseas in the service, and one of the, I guess, officials higher up than him told him, yeah, you're a doctor, but you ain't operating on the white folks. So again, word salad when we start talking about the military. Like I said, there was the preliminary emancipation that Lincoln wrote in September of '62, and that's funny, because part of that, uh, you know, it was written different. There was some things left out, omitted, if you will. And I'm a big word cat. So when I listen to people talk, I listen for the words they omit because those are the ones that we need to be concerned about. The words they say, we already know. You know what I'm saying? We have to be mindful of the words that they omit purposely because those are the ones. Um, and then, again, moving on, when we start talking about the financial impact, you know, he wrote in there part of what is left out of the final Emancipation Proclamation. In the preliminary, he spoke about reimbursement to those who lost their slaves. He would actually recommend it to Congress that they be reimbursed. So reparations, wow. Time together. Again, I'm not here to tell people what to think. I just like to share the information, challenge you, the listener, to do your due diligence. And if you are so inclined, try to make it make sense. Um, Here's another little specific that's not discussed too much. The preliminary proclamation and then the final proclamation. In the preliminary, it was their forward forever free, and then the actuals henceforward shall be free. Ooh, those little words! Man, I'm trying to tell y'all, it's the words omitted. Um, another thing that I didn't even know, but again, just trying to make sure that I pay attention and at least try to open my mind. In 1862, Congress set free slaves in Washington, D.C. Didn't even know that, but that's why some of those things are left out. When you look at the locations that he went in, when he start talking about Texas and Arkansas and all of these places, because in DC, Congress had already set them free. That is a very interesting topic to do a deep dive in if you're so inclined. Why did that happen? Um, so now here so again, when we start talking about the moral compass of people, and yeah, I got notes, because I don't remember everything. But when we start talking about the moral component of the Emancipation Proclamation, like I said, if it was an act of justice, why did justice take so long? So when the lead up, right, and again, understand we're talking about a country at war with one another on the basis fundamental of slavery, and then again the functioning of the government based on representation within said government. But then we're talking about a populace where the 3/5 compromise would show for every so many black folks you would have one, and that would count towards your representation in government. So when we start talking about the moral component, so there was a gentleman, Senator Sumner, I believe from Massachusetts. He was a abolitionist, if so to speak. Now again, I don't know the man. I'm just going off of historical reference points. He was against slavery. That does not excuse him if his father or his grandfathers held slaves. Not saying that. I'm just saying him, the individual, announced that he was against slavery. And he would do everything he could. He would fight in Congress to end slavery in the entirety of the United States. So one of his things was law. Like Senator Sumner was, hey, listen, when and we should give these black folks their freedom, then they should be awarded the exact same laws that we have the privilege of living under. Now, Sumner is pretty popular because he got beat up by another dude, was Brooks. I believe it was Senator Brooks who beat him up with a cane on the floor of the House, right? So same gentleman. he wanted that, and he spoke diligently about it. So he got pushback. And one of the things that I've come across, which again leads to the moral component and the creation of the Emancipation Proclamation, was Senator John Henderson of Missouri. And during, I believe it was an interview, or maybe a newspaper interview, he was asked him, like, what was his. Now, he got to mind you, we're talking Missouri Compromise. And the way Missouri came to be a state was because now there was a compromise. Because Missouri wanted to be a slaveholding state. Well, the United States still needed some kind of balance. So what they did, the Missouri Compromise, you can have Missouri as a slave state, but then we're going to take Maine as a free state, right? So the thought process of this Senator Henderson from Missouri, I'm not. Look here, man. I'm talking. We need slavery. That's how we gonna run this forever and forever and forever. My great granddaddy had slaves. I'm gonna have slaves the whole nine, right? And so one of his statements were, and I didn't write it down, but because it stuck in me. One of his statements, basically, he said, "We will give the black man his freedom. It's up to himself to get those rights. We're gonna give you a freedom, bro, but we ain't giving you no right. We ain't letting you enjoy the same rights under law that we have, right? So that's why you didn't get voting in 1863. You got freedom, as limited as it was. You set me free, but I ain't got no place to go. I ain't got no place to go. Again, tell a 6-year-old, I'm gonna give you your freedom. Go ahead and walk out that door. What are you gonna do? He ain't got no car, can't drive. He can barely, say his ABCs. I don't even know if he knows the Pythagorean theorem. I don't know if he knows Maslow's law of higher activity. I don't know these things. So, that was the mindset, right? And I'm sure Senator Henderson wasn't the only one that felt that way. So now, again, we talk about the moral component, and the time, the 1800s. Late 1800s, it was no internet. Come on now, right? So word had to spread, word of mouth, maybe, written telegram or something, So if you have the mindset of, I've always had slaves, my family is built on slavery, they won't know if I don't tell them. So again, the Emancipation Proclamation didn't end slavery. It didn't even stop it, really, because those states, Arkansas, Texas, Florida, Mississippi, these places at that time weren't even. It's some fundamental technicality nuances that existed. They weren't part of the United States because they conceded, because they wanted slavery. So that's why he wrote those states in there. So if that's the case, your little proclamation or announcement, I'm cool. So again, we go, and this is the part about, moral competency. And then we also add in some of the Juneteenth celebrations. Is it took until June 19th, 1865, General Order Number 3, issued by General Gordon Granger, to make it all the way to Galveston, Texas, to tell them black folks, hey man, y'all free, get on up out of here. You know what I'm saying? And again, if it was wholeheartedly about a human aspect and a human compassion, why did it take so long? Right? The Emancipation Proclamation is by a group, not by the collective. Big difference. Big difference. So like I said, it did not end it. It was an announcement to say, you're free to go. And if the other people want to be a part of this, then they're going to be free to go down there. And they was like, yeah, with that. And that's why we have the Civil War. So now we're moving on. I know I've been at it for 35 minutes. I'm going to wrap it up hopefully really soon. Like I said, the Emancipation Proclamation did not end slavery, but it was a springboard to the start of DEI and affirmative action. Come full circle, boy. If you don't know the past. So then we get the 13th Amendment, which was passed in Congress in January of 1865, but it wasn't ratified until December of 65. And again, mind you, we're talking 2 years, right? We're talking 2 years. So those folks in Galveston was like, man, I ain't telling these slaves that they can go. You know what I'm saying? So let's really on the 13th Amendment. Again, it's the words, man. Um, this one always gets me. Section 1 of the 13th Amendment outlines slavery as is slavery shall not exist. They ain't never said it's illegal. They just said it won't exist. Slavery, the word, won't exist. When we don't understand the word game, that's when things happen. You know what I'm saying? Shall. You know what I'm saying? Shall is may. Shall and may. Shall and may. Those are the most ambiguous words. No, shall and may. So it says it shall not exist. Shall not exist. But if you do your history and you see immediately after 1865, the influx of black men incarcerated, because Section 1 says slavery or involuntary servants other than for a crime shall not exist. Understand the words of that. Section 2, this Section 2. Congress shall have power to enforce by appropriate legislation. Here's my back and forth with that. If Congress has the power, this is written in the 13th Amendment, a federal document. If Congress has the power to enforce the alleged non-existence of slavery by appropriate legislation, then don't that same Congress then have the power to overturn it? And I say all that to say, in short, can't they just say to hell with the 13th Amendment and y'all go back to how it was? I'm just saying, if they have that power, then the power should be equally true in reverse. Do what you want with that. And then, after the 13th, because of the male pronoun used in 13th, then you get the 14th and the 15th Amendment, in which is another, one I throw out to people. The 14th basically says, you have the right to citizenship, due process, equal protection, not privilege, equal protection. Again, due process, citizenship, equal protection, not privilege. Not privilege. Because again, it doesn't say equal rights in there. It does not say that. It says equal protection, not privilege. Go back to Senator Henderson. You can have protection. You have your due process. You can be a citizen, but you ain't getting the privilege, my man. Then you go to 15th, which is, you can't be denied your rights based on the color of your skin, right? Now, the part of the, 14th and 15th, you got to understand this. And this is the part when we see white American women in politics today, or just in general, saying the most absurd things when we talk about DEI or affirmative action. Understand this. It wasn't to the 18 or 1920s till you were allowed to vote. You dig? And that's because of what, Emancipation Proclamation and the 13th Amendment brought forward. So don't get all high and mighty thinking, oh, I was always involved. No, you wasn't. Because if you go back to the original creation of the ideation of this stolen land and its announcements, it was white property owning males who only, had a hand in the creation, had a hand in anything. If you weren't a white male with those adjectives in front of you, you weren't participating. You had no input. So understand the 14th and 15th Amendment and where it came from. Now we can start talking about the connectivity about DEI and affirmative action. So yeah, that was my take on the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, as I end and I close, I'm 40 minutes. I was trying to keep myself under 50. I'm doing great. When we're coming up on the month of February, I don't even like saying that word. You can say I don't say it right, but we're coming up on the month of February, and across this stolen land, in almost every school, I'm not going to say some schools. I know Florida and Texas, they don't really like talking about black folks and letting them partake in anything or learn anything. So across this land and some schools, it's going to be Black History Month, and they're going to talk about Rosa Parks. They're going to talk about Dr. King. I'm trying to think of the other benign, passive, vanilla black folks. They'll talk about, Barack Obama, Oprah Winfrey, you know what I'm saying? Jackie Robinson, Michael Jackson, they might talk about these folks, right? But understand this, them folks, those benign, vanilla black folks that you praise and worship and idolize and parade around your school walls, don't even exist if this Emancipation Proclamation doesn't start the fire. You see what I'm saying? I think my personal thought is that every school, February shouldn't be the only month we talk about black folks, first and foremost. But if that's the start, again, we need to start Emancipation Proclamation. We need to start, right? February 1st, every school that has the audacity to highlight Black History Month, celebrate it, then the entire school needs to announce and read the Emancipation Proclamation. Because without it, and that's why I said earlier when I started this, I keep a copy of the Emancipation Proclamation on my body, on my person, in my vehicle, whenever I go. Because why? Because just like I said, if they have the power to say yes, then they have the power to say no. It is not a law. It is an announcement. There's so many ambiguities in this, right? And I got a realtor's license. I got a contractor's license. I got a driver's license, a Class A. I got my own business. I got my own nonprofit. There's a lot of things I got. But if someone decides to take them away or burn this Emancipation Proclamation or cancel, like they say, they like cancel culture, cancel or ratify or amend the 13th Amendment, then none of that means nothing. You know what I'm saying? None of those extracurricular licenses or certificates I got mean anything. Because then I'll just be regulated back to serving somebody else involuntarily. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, young people, I hope you took something from this. Again, I'm not here to change your mind. It's not what I'm here to do. I'm just here to share some challenging points of view to make you at least think, to ponder some things about where we are today when you hear these conversations about DEI and affirmative action and equal rights and civil rights and social justice and equity and inclusion and all of these things. Now what? Now what? And that's why I do this. So again, thank you for joining me today on Smith the Speaker. I am he, the aforementioned, heretofore, forward, hence, and therefore shall ever be your boy Smith the Speaker. I can get legalese if I have to. Thank you for joining me today. This was my review and I don't want to say discussion. That's not the word I'm looking for. Review and overview of the Emancipation Proclamation signed January 1st, 1863 by then President Abraham Lincoln. Before you leave, hit the like, hit the subscribe button, tap in, send a response, leave a comment, let me know what you think. And then again, this coming Sunday, regularly program show, Smith the Speaker. I start a new series this month of January entitled Free Game Sunday School. Free Game Sunday School. Tap in Sunday morning, 9 a.m. It's your boy Smith. Until then, folks, be well. Black folks, you know I love you.